Okay, shalom everybody. We are today will be a little different than the standard share. First of all, because I am without a PowerPoint because the computer I've been using overheated, and so we thank my daughter for the computer that we're using today. Now, let me just tell you what I'd like to do together today. And that is to take the issue of halachic measurements, which we started speaking about last time, and take it to the next step. If you'll remember last time, or even if you don't remember, I'll summarize it right now. The Gemara speaks about the relationship between measurements of length and measurements of volume. What I mean by that is the Gemara tells us that the size of a revius, it tells us the size of a revius in fingers, 2 by 2 by 2 and a half and a fifth fingers. In other words, revius, which is a shear of volume, is translated into a kind of a cube that is a rectangular cube, and theoretically, if you were to build such a cube, so you would fill it with wine. You'd know how much wine you need for kiddush. That's what the Gemara does. The source for that is mikvah, because we know two things about mikvah. Number one, that it is 40 sa'ah, and we also know that it is the minimal size of a mikvah is 1 amma by 1 amma by 3 ammas high. And if you were to fill such a, so to speak, a box that was that size with water, it sounds to the Gemara, you'd have 40 sa'ah. And then if you just build on those proportions and you take a revius of that would fit based on making the calculations. And last week we went through the calculations and the equation worked out bidyuk 100%. Oh, shalom, Mr. Demby. Dr. Demby, how are you doing? Welcome. So the equation worked out exactly, and we saw how the conversion worked. Okay, so everything was beautiful. Now, the problem began when people tried to compare the measurements they were using with the measurements that come out of that Gemara test. In other words, in Prague, if we go back to the Noda B'Yehuda, the Noda B'Yehuda was Rabbi Yechezkel Landau, was actually our very first, when we began the Achronim Chabura. So he was one of the first people that we spoke about, maybe I think the first person that we spoke about. He lived from 1713 to 1793. He decided to do an experiment. Prague was a major Torah city. It was a central city. The Rabbanim there were the great Rabbanim. And they had a measure there that was traced itself back to the Tosus Yom Tov. Tosus Yom Tov was Rabbi Yom Tov Lippman Heller, who was a Talmud of the Maharal, who was also the Rav of Prague. And again, Prague is Rabbi Chizkel Landau, the Maharal, the Tosus Yom Tov, the Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. So these are great Rabbanim. Anyways, the sheer, the amount of flour that is needed for challah is 43 1/5 eggs. So Rabbi Chizkel Landau, he did an experiment. And I'm going to read from what he says. He says, I want to tell you what happened. He says, והתוספות יום טוב מדד שהוא פינט מידה ישנה שמצאתי כאן בבואי לפראג. There was a measure that I found that traces itself back to the Tosfos Yom Tov when I came to Prague. ואני מדדתי, I measured it, ומצאתי שהוא פחות מפינט, and I saw that it was less, a pint less. ושוב עשיתי כלי המחזיק 7 הגודלים, פחות 2 תשיעית, באורך ורוחב ורום מרובע, שהוא שיר חלה, מפורש בשולחן ערוך ביורדיה, סימן שין כ"ד. Meaning, if you look in סימן שין כ"ד, the Shulchan Aruch gives you a way of calculating how much you need for challah. You make a box that is the size of 7 thumb widths minus 2/9, and cube that, and you'll come up with a shir challah. So the Rabbi said, I did it, and it ended up that the shir that people were using from the Tosfos Yom Tov was more or less half that big. So he says, now I'll read for you. Again, I'm reading from the Tzion L'Nefesh Chaya, which is Rabbi Yechezkel Landau's commentary on Psachim, and it's on Kuf Tes Vav, and might be Kuf Tes Zayin Amud Beis. He adds it in the sugyas about Psachim. He says, by the way, he begins it, he says, Hol v'chaviva mitzvah b'shaita, because this mitzvah is very beloved in its proper time. We have to eat a kazayis matzah on the Pesach night. Same thing with more. Revis, shel Torah, we have to drink a revis. Shira kazayis v'shira revis. So I have to tell you that I wanted to clarify how big the shir is of a revis and how big the shir is of a kazayis, and it came out not like the Shulchan Aruch. That's what he says. So he says he did his experiment based on the Shulchan Aruch's measurements for challah. He compared it with the measure that they were using in Prague. Now I'm reading, I'll try my best. It holds a little more than 8 zeitels, which is 2 pints. The two shiurim are not in sync. And they're both halacha l'Moshe Misinai shiurim. Kishir mem gimel beitzim mechomesh hu halacha l'Moshe Misinai. The shir of challah, that it's 43 1/5 eggs, is halacha l'Moshe Misinai. V'chein shir mikveh hu halacha l'Moshe Misinai. And that's also the 40 sa'ah of a mikveh is also halacha l'Moshe Misinai. So he said, when I compared the shir of 43 1/5 eggs with the parallel shir that you would come to if you would build a box to make it the size of challah, compared based on the shirim of a mikvah, like the Gemara in Pesachim says, so then you're going to have a problem. They're not in sync. How is it possible that these 2 halacha l'Moshe Misinai shiurim are not in sync? Meaning, now just to sharpen it, if you were just to measure if we were just to be given a volume measurement, great, we would measure it, and they would say fine. If we were just to be given length measurements, we would use them and say fine. The problem was only created when the Gemara. This discussion is all just in the first 5-6 pages of the responsum. He discusses this. So if I were just to build on volume measurements, so I would just follow volume measurement. I would just take when I wanted to calculate challah, I would one time we would have the rub of the city or the rub of the whole area take 43 and a third eggs that he understands are middle size eggs, 43 and a fifth eggs, and make a shear, and everybody will use that shear. And we'll do the same for an amma and a tefach and all that. The thing is, though, that the Gemara connected the shiurim of volume with the shiurim of length. And when the Noda B'Yehuda did the experiment, he found out that they're not identical. That's the problem. And this is the problem that the Achronim deal with, which is the source for a big dispute that exists in the halachos about shiurim. And let's just read what the Noda B'Yehuda's conclusions are. Now, so he says, "Ve'al korchach shenishtana bizmanenu," and we're forced to say that something changed in our times. O sheha agodalim niskatlu, either thumbs got bigger, vehema gedolim yoser meha agodalim shebimei shayu bimei tanoim, and they're bigger than in the times of the tanoim. I just lost my place. Oh, she'abetzim niskatnu, or the eggs got smaller. Vehema bizmanenu ktanim mima shayu b'mei tanoim, and they're smaller than they were in the times of the tanoim. Meaning, those are your two possibilities, because when you measure by eggs, it's not equal. It's half of the size, more or less, than when you measure by this box that the Shulchan Aruch simply did the conversion based on thumbs. So the reason I say thumbs is because tefach, amma, all of them are all based on the smallest unit of measurement in length is a thumb width. So there's two possibilities, he said. Either the thumbs got bigger or the eggs got smaller. So he says, the generations are getting smaller. It's impossible that our thumbs are bigger than the thumbs of the Tanoim. So we're forced to say that the eggs in our time became smaller. Therefore, and this is the line that created a revolution in the topic of shiurim. That on that size, that was the size that the Tosfos Yom Tov was using. You should take off challah without a bracha. Kilo basi lahakil al shira shel the Tosfos Yom Tov. I didn't come to be makel. I didn't say don't take off challah. Of course, take off challah, but don't say a bracha. Aval bracha lo yavarchu ad shiyu shnei pint kemach. Until you have 2 pint kemach. Again, whatever he means by pei yun nun tet mechukim uma'at yoser, meaning an even 2 pei yud nun tet with a little more. And now that it's clear that our eggs are half the size, imkain shir zayis shehu chatzi beitza hu kebeitza shalanu. And now an olive is known to be half a beit, half an egg. So then it ends up that our eggs are the size of their olives. Because ashair be'achilas matzah umor, and that's the way I'm going to calculate matzah and mora b'chol shirei haTorah. V'shir Ravi shel Torah, al pi minazo, he yoser mi rova zaydel shel zaydel hayashan. It's a quarter more than the old zaydel, whatever a zaydel is. Again, because a revis is also a shear of volume that the Gemara converted into a cube based on the shiurim of length. The old zaydel shematzasi po kal kodesh Prague. Uva zaydel yesh gimel revis umerza miravis shel Torah le'erach u purta lo daikina lechumra. Anyways, this was the revolution. Now, the Noda B'Yehuda was not a lone voice. The Rav Asher Weiss lists some of the and the Chazon Ish lists some of the poskim that went with the Noda B'Yehuda. The Chasam Sofer, Rav Ephraim Zalman Margolius. Chazon Ish, of course, is well known that he went by that shita, and in fact, that's called Shir Chazon Ish because of this. And there is in the Ma'aser Rav relates the minhagim of the Vilna Gaon. So the Vilna Gaon apparently went by this shita. Now, in an interesting anecdote, the interpretation of the laugh. The Noda B'Yehuda had a student, Rav Eliezer Fleckelus, and he wrote a sefer called Tshuva Miyava, which is a sefer of Shilas and Tshuvas. And so he said that he told his Rebbe, you are a very tall person. Maybe your thumb is bigger. Your thumb yourself, your own thumb, is bigger than the standard thumb. So the Rav Eliezer Fleckel says that his Rebbe laughed. So the question is, how do you interpret that laugh? Was that a laugh of you're right, or was it a laugh of I know that I'm tall, then that's kind of humorous, and I know that you're joking, and I know that you know that I was basing myself on the average thumb, plus who says my thumb is bigger than anybody else's thumb. Tall people have bigger thumbs. I don't know. Now, the Chazon Ish was known for popularizing this shir in our generation now, and that's why we call it Shir Chazon Ish. One of the things he does is give precise numbers for everything based on this approach to shiurim. If you want a cute way of remembering this, so I saw it in the Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata, in the laws of Kiddush, in the footnotes. So he says like this: the standard approach in Yerushalayim, and we'll talk a little bit about the shir of Rav Avram Chaim Naeh, but the standard approach in Yerushalayim was that a revis is 86 milliliters. And so says Rav Neubert, the author of the Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata, Talmud of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. So the gematria of Kos is 86, Kaf is 20, Vav is 6, and Samach is 60, so that's 86. So the gematria of Kos is the 86 milliliters. That's why you'll always remember the 86 milliliters. The Chazon Ish has a measurement of 150 milliliters. That's the gematria of Kos Hagun. That's the gematria of a proper cup. Now, if you remember last week, so we read a machlokas in the Tanoim about the size of an egg, about the shear of a kibetza. Do you take so so it's clear in the Mishnayos there that we read last week that the shiurim of a kibetza and a zayis, etc., they're all based on the average size. However, there's two approaches to how to calculate that average. One of them is to take the smallest of the small and the biggest of the big, and then add them and divide by 2, and that'll be the median, and then use that as the way of figuring out what the size of an average or the median zayis is. Or do you take what seems to you to be a zayis beinoni, a medium-sized olive or a medium-sized egg, and then it's very likely that the egg that you're getting is the average size egg. So that's a machlokas in the Mishnah about, do you get a median of an egg, the smallest of the small, biggest of the big, and add them and divide by 2, or do you take the size of an average size egg? Now, that sounds like anybody who ever wants to calculate a kibetza would just pick up an egg and compare it. Or let's say in his house, he would take an egg, see how much water is displaced, see how much that is exactly, and make a kli that size, and he'll always be able to calculate kibetzas. However, a couple comments here. I just want to add one more thing also. Last week also, just reminding us from last week. Last week we also saw the Tshuvas HaGaonim, who said that the reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Halacha L'Moshe Sinai chose shiurim that are things like a kibetza and a kazayas and a seora, etc., is in order that you should have readily available shiurim that will always be there in all situations. Now, it seems like you should be able to just pick up an olive, pick up an egg, and then use it in your generation, and you'll be able to clarify how much an egg is and how much an olive is. And if you live in the 1700s, you'll pick up an average egg in the 1700s, and if you live in the 2100s, you'll pick up an average egg in the 2100s, and if you're living in the times of the Tanoim and Amoraim, you'll do the same thing. That's the simple understanding of that Tshuvas HaGaonim that we saw. The Chazon Ish, however, said that number one, every now and then you'll see in the Gemara that every now and then they did come up with a certain measure that they standardized. The Gemara talks about a certain measure they had in Tzipori, and a certain measure, I forget where the other place was, in Taveri, I think. So you see that there were times when, based on the same Mishnah, they standardized the measurement. What does it mean they standardized the measurement? They determine what would be hakol be'einei haroa, what would be in the eyes of the person who sees it, meaning not just any stam person off the street, but dafka the chachamim who had clear, good eyes to be able to see what an average size beitza is, and use that as and create for their generation a standard. Now, the Chazon Ish said that once the Noda B'Yehuda did that, and the Noda B'Yehuda and the Chasam Sofer and Rav Chaim Zalman Margolius and the Vilna Gaon, when they all took that approach, so it was like basting deciding that this is the size. It's like defining what a kibetza beinonis is for everybody. That's what it is. Let me see if I can bring out the words of the Chazon Ish on this. Again, it's a little bit of a difficult concept. Just a second. Shouldn't take me a long time. Yeah, here we are. And again, I'm reading from the Chazon Ish, Kuntras HaShiurim Siman Lamed Tes. It's in the Orach Chaim section of the Chazon Ish, and it's subsection Hey, and he writes as follows. This event took place, era Bismana Gaonim Bal Noda B'Yehuda V'Agra, in the times of the Noda B'Yehuda and the Gra, that were more or less they were contemporaries. Shematzu Demidas HaEsbaos Umidas HaBeitzim Ena Mishtavos Etzlenu, and they saw that the thumb measurements and the egg measurements are not in sync. Umidas HaBeitzim Kovas Shir Chala Mechza Mimidas HaEtzbaos, and it ends up that if you calculate based on eggs, you're going to come up with the size that's half than the thumbs, than the fingers. It's called fingers, but it's really thumbs. Because it's unlikely that our thumbs are larger than they were in the earlier generations. They decided that the eggs were smaller. That got smaller. And they set for all of Israel that the measurement of challah should be done based on the thumb measurements, which is mentioned by the Shulchan Aruch. And the whole exile followed their approach. And it became publicized in all the books that came afterwards. The Beitzim Shalanu Ktanim, that our eggs are smaller. They calculated the amma based on the thumb. Yud Gimel Varshke for Russia, 58 centimeters b'midas meter. And I'm leaving out the parentheses here. Zoe Iker Hora Kedasa Noda B'Yehuda B'Chasam Sofer. Okay, there's a whole thing about Minhag Yerushalayim that I'm skipping. But here's the line. Here's the clincher line. Umiu. Acharei shenikve'a halacha al pi Noda B'Yehuda V'Agra ve'Moreno harav Avram Zalman Margolius v'Chasam Sofer. When the halacha was decided based on these four great poskim. Again, this is the Gedolei Achronim, the Noda B'Yehuda, the Vilna Gaon, Rav Ephraim Zalman Margolius, the Chasam Sofer, v'nispashta ha'ora, and this hora, this halachic instruction spread. Have ki'ilu kiblu kovu bastin lechol Yisrael samida lefi roos bastin. It's as if that bastin set for all of Israel the measure as the bastin sees fit. V'nikba shir chala al pi mididas agoda, and the shir of chala was set based on the measurement of the thumb. Vayanir elem k'fi ma shekiblu mehem 13 varshke. Ahama shehu 58 centimeter. Now, this doesn't reflect negatively on anything happened before, because they're just saying that this is what we're seeing. This is the egg that we're seeing. Okay, now that's the sheer Chazon Ish. Again, the Kuntras Hashiurim is long and involved. Page after page after page after page. I pulled out one Iker section. Now, there was, however, as I mentioned before, a whole group of poskim that used the old smaller measurements, just like the Tosas Yom Tov did. Again, the Tosas Yom Tov lived not so long before the Noda B'Yehuda, and it doesn't sound like there was some radical change in the size of the eggs between the Noda B'Yehuda and the Tosas Yom Tov. So now Rav Asher Weiss, in his article, has a list of poskim that were took a different direction. One of them is well known as Rav Avram Chaim Naeh. Avram Chaim Naeh was the author of the Ketzos HaShulchan, which is a great sefer of Psak Halacha, which I'm now inspired to learn more of after seeing his introduction to the Shirei Torah. And he was one of the Chachmei Yerushalayim. He was from the world of Chabad, and he was Miyashiv Minhag Olam. Now again, this is a theme in Psak Halacha that wait a second, everybody's doing it differently. So one thing is to say, look, it's not like everybody's talking Lashon Hara, or everybody's talking in shul, or everybody's doing this, that, or the other thing, which is clearly wrong. Everybody was noheg mitzvahs in a particular way, and it sounds like a lot of the poskim were. It's true, the Noda B'Yehuda and the Vilna Gaon and the Rephaim Zalman Magos and the Chasam Sofer took that approach, and the Chazon Ish developed that it is in line with he figured out the background concepts which make it fit into the way we look at that Mishnah and the way the Halacha Moshe Sinai works. However, though, there was a group of people who were interested in trying to be miyashiv, the old minhag. I'm on. If you're in the source material, the Minchas Asher, it's on page Mem Gimel. It's in the left-hand column. The paragraph there's two paragraphs that begin v'hagrach. V'hagon Rav Chaim Naeh hishtis es ikar devarav al divrei Rambam meferish Mishnah b'Maseches Eduyos Perkama Mishnah Beis. He based himself on the Rambam Perish Mishnayos she'asa kli mida shel revis u'matza shemachzik korov l'chav zayin dram. So he made a kli that would be a measure of a revis that holds close to 27 draham, and he made a kli of 43 beitzim, etc. for shir challah. Umatzasha kli zeh machzik 520 draham, that it holds 520 draham, and that's what he writes in Hilchos Bikurim, and that's in the Shulchan Aruch. Hagam Rav Chaim Naeh madad lefi midas hadrama Turkey. He calculated based on the Turkish draham, and v'kava lefiv the l'shitas harambam yesh b'ravi 86 gram u'beveitza 57 gram, and that's where he gets that a revis is 86, and kebeitza is 57. Now, when you calculate then the thumb width, so the thumbs are 2 centimeters wide. But when you measure meaning when you make that cheshbon, you're going to end up with a cube that works for 2 centimeter width thumbs. However, when you measure thumbs, normally you get to 2.2 or up to 2.4 centimeters. So that's the problem. Meaning, if you start from the Rambam's measurements and build on that, you're going to get into trouble when you build on the thumb width. You're going to get into trouble with your thumb widths. And there was another sefer which I don't know. I don't know who he was, and the Chazon Ish writes glowingly about him. But he said that when you talk about thumb widths, they are closely stuck together, and it's not a natural width of a thumb, but it's a constricted width of a thumb. Rav Chaim Naeh said you measure from a thinner part of the thumb and not the wider part of the thumb. Now, this is says Rav Asher Weiss, dochek, to say that. Now, Rav Asher Weiss suggests the following. Again, this is an original approach, which again he says this is what I would have said if I wasn't afraid of sticking my head in the midst of these great rabbis. That for every shiur, for shiurim that are based on volume, you use volume measurements. For shiurim that are based on length, you use length measurements, and you might come up with stiras. But the whole point of that shiur, the whole point of that Mishnah, and that whole point of the Tshuvas HaGaonim was that the whole point of using available measurements, available objects like olives and eggs, etc., and hand breadths and thumbs and all that, was in order to enable applying the shiurim to all situations. So ideally, the thing to do would be to whenever it comes to volume issues, just follow the volume measurement. And whenever it comes to length issues, follow the length measurement. Now, and then you don't have to worry about, are the eggs bigger or smaller? Because we're not trying to get at, that's the whole point of the Halach LaMoshe Sinai, according to the Gaonim. We're not trying to get at some objective, abstract, perfect shiur, but rather the whole point of the shiur is that it is applicable to every generation using the objects that you will find in every generation. And it's true, in the times of the Tanoim, they connected the two. But it is totally legitimate to use volume measurements for volume halachas and length measurements for length halachas, despite the fact that you might end up in a contradiction. Now, again, that is an approach that is emphasizing the ability to apply the measurements to all situations, as opposed to the goal of trying to get at the pristine measurement. Now, just a couple names to end with. Just to get some, so you have some names of some of the Makilim. Yeah. This is the last thing I'd like to share with you. Again, this is just giving the info where the long and short of it is that because the Gemara and Pesachim connected measurements of volume with measurements of length by saying 40 saw of a mikvah is 1 by 1 by 3 amas, and a revius is and it gives you the measurement in two thumb widths by 2 thumb widths by 2 and a fifth and 2.5 and a fifth thumb widths. So it opened us up to the experiment that the Naeh Yehuda did, and then found out that they weren't in sync. Meaning, if you were just to take eggs and you were just to take because we have two different ways of measuring the exact same shear. The shear of challah is measured in eggs. The shear of challah is measured in this box. The shear of revius is mentioned excuse me. We'll leave that. So we're given the measurement in eggs. We're given the measurement in a box, and they don't come out the same. We've got a problem. That's the problem. The Naeh Yehuda's solution was the eggs got smaller. So you should be machmir in both directions. Machmir to take off challah, even on the smaller shear, but machmir to say a bracha only if you have the larger shear. Rav Asher Weiss, his suggestion, if I understand it properly, is for volume measurements, use the volume things. For length measurements, use the length things. And don't worry about a contradiction that would come about, because that's the way the shiurim were made in order to ensure that they should be applicable to all situations. Rabbi Avram Chaim Naeh's solution was, his whole approach was to build on the Rambam's. The Rambam told us exactly what a revius is. The Rambam told us how much the shear of challah is. Let's just translate that into nowadays. And he used the drams and that the Rambam used. There is something parenthetically that I saw, and that is that there's a friend of Rabbi Schuster whose name is Rav Hadar Margolin, and he's an interesting researcher. And he went around to museums and got the measurements of these drams, and he comes up with different shiurim than the Avram Chaim Naeh is. And apparently, I heard that Rabbi Willig would like that approach. Now, I'd just like to end with a group of achronim that did follow the smaller shiurim, meaning the standard shiurim that everybody was using, what would be called Rav Avram Chaim Naeh's approach. Rav Chaim Volozhin, in a book called Shari Rachamim, which was recording the Minhagim of Rav Chaim Volozhin. So even though he was a Talmud of the Gra, so it said he gave somebody who made Kiddush on Shacharis of Yom Tov a third of a spoonful of farfel of matzah farfel, cooked in bread, cooked in milk. And that was, and when the question came up, is there a kazayas makom suda? He said, yeah, there's a kazayas. And just as usual, and apparently, and Yud Mislotzka, I forgot who it is. I don't even know if I knew. He said that Reb Chaim was very makil on the shear of kazayas, even with regards to matzah on the first night of Pesach. So even on a doraisa, Reb Chaim Volozhin was makil on smaller shiurim, meaning that would be probably around the size of our olives. Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, the Netziv, also held from smaller shiurim. He writes Musar to his son, Rav Chaim Berlin, and he says, he gave Musar, why is he machmer? Again, I'm on page Mem Tes, section Vav of Rav Asher Weiss's article. Why were you machmer on shiurim? V'zebora the shir kazayis hamavor v'shulchan aruch hu shir katan mod. It's a very small shir. V'lama lanan lahachmer. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach testified that he heard from Rav Shlomo Kalish, the son-in-law of the Chelkas Yoav, Shehei Shaya Nocheach Kasher Nishala Avnei Nezer al Shir Kazayis. When they asked the Avnei Nezer on about the Shir of a Kazayis, he pointed to his finger a little under the fingernail. That's a very small. That's like a small olive. So even though there are those who were machmer, that's the approach of, and that is a very strong approach. The Rabbi Yehuda and the Vilna Gaon and the Ravaim Zalman Margolis and the Chazon Sofer and the Chazon Ish, of course. There was still a group of poskim that held from the standard term. Again, there is a general approach to be machmir and doraisas, to be mekel and rabbanans, so that's out there. Again, this is not a. As I was learning the sugya, I realized that this is a very, very, very broad sugya. For instance, Rav Avram Chaim Naeh in his article, so he goes through people, animals, and vegetation. Did they change from the earlier times to now? And he brings rayas left and right, and my head was spinning. And I realized that this sugya is all over Shas, and to really understand it, you really have to put everything together from all over Shas. So it is a very mind-spinning sugya. But that's what I believe. What we spoke about today is where the major minhagim come from. The Chazon Ish's approach comes from the Rabbi Yehuda's experiment, and the fact that a number of Gedolei HaAchronim paskin that way, the Vilna Gaon, Chazon Sofer, Ryan Zalman Margolius. The Rav Avram Chaim Naeh's approach, which is the 86 milliliters kos, gematria kos, for Ravis, that comes from the Rambam's measurement, and following through the Rambam's measurement. It doesn't work with the thumbs, so he has problems with the thumbs. Those are the two major minhagim around today. That is what I wanted to share with you about the topic of Sherman. God willing, I'm going to be choosing a new topic next.